If you want to know what survivorship bias is and want to see it play out in action, oh, do I have a story for you today. Welcome everybody to JJ9 News, where we talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Jared Garrett, representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking about the New Orleans Saints bringing back head coach Dennis Allen for a third season. GM Mickey Loomis announcing that Dennis Allen is returning to the team. No real surprises there. It's been a disappointing start to Dennis Allen's career in New Orleans. Didn't make the playoffs the last 2 years. But the real story isn't that he's coming back. The real story is what Mickey Loomis said in terms of his justification for why he's bringing him back. Because when Loomis was talking about Allen and why he's bringing him back, he had, shall we say, one of the dumbest reasons I have ever heard. Said Loomis on keeping Allen, Chuck Noll his first 3 years. 1-13, 5-9, 6-8. They recognize he's a good football coach. Bill Belichick his first 3 years. 6-10, 7-9, 7-9. Tom Landry, 0-11, 4-9, 5-8, 4-10, 5-8. All of them Hall of Fame coaches. The easy thing is to blame them. You've got to look beyond that. All right, there is a lot to dissect here with that comment, because this is survivorship bias at its finest. It's like saying, I'm going to drop out of college because Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs did that. Yes, they were very successful, but there's a million others who did that and were not successful at all. You're talking about the absolute cream of the crop. There are so many coaches that had horrible starts to their career, and shocker, stayed horrible. Look at Dennis Erickson. His first 3 years with Seattle, he was never above 500. He stayed on for another season in 1998. Once again, failed to have a winning record. Bart Starr, his first 3 seasons with Green Bay, he went 13-29. They kept him on for another 6 years, and he never had a single season with more than 8 wins. Norm Van Brocklin, his first 3 seasons with Minnesota, he won 10 games. They kept him on for another 3 years, and he ended his Vikings career with a winning percentage of just 36%. Look at Gus Bradley. His first 3 years in Jacksonville, the Jaguars won 12 games. Let's keep him on for a 4th year. It doesn't work out. Marion Campbell, he was bad in Atlanta and bad in Philadelphia, but let's give him another try as a head coach in Atlanta in the late 80s. What could go wrong? Shocker, it doesn't work out. Yes, Belichick, Landry, and Noll had awful starts to their career. If you just look at the records, their starts were not great. But there's a million others who had awful starts to their career record-wise, and they stayed awful. They're the exception to the rule. Plus, Dennis Allen, completely different set of circumstances than Bill Belichick, Tom Landry, and Chuck Noll. The Bill Belichick thing is disingenuous. Belichick did nothing in Cleveland. He won the Super Bowl in year 2 in New England. You're counting that as the same stint. It was 2 very different stints. The Browns fired him. Tom Landry, he took over an expansion team. Of course they're going to stink. They're a freaking expansion team. You're going to hold that against him that they were bad at the start? He was building a team that didn't exist. And Chuck Noll took over the worst team in football and a team that had never won a playoff game in their half-century-long history. And Landry and Noll did this in an era with no free agency and incredibly restricted player movement, so a rebuild like that was impossible. Dennis Allen took over a 9-8 team that made the playoffs in 4 of the last 5 seasons and hasn't had double-digit losses before he got there since 2005, which was so long ago that they were playing outside of New Orleans due to Hurricane Katrina. It is very different than Tom Landry, who took over an expansion team. You're comparing Tom Landry to Dennis Allen, Chuck Noll to Dennis Allen, Bill Belichick, which isn't even true, to Dennis Allen? Give me a break. This is survivorship bias at its finest. Look, if you want to keep Dennis Allen on, that's one thing. If you want to say, look, we just see a new offensive coordinator, we like the way the defense is playing, I like what Dennis Allen brings to the table, that's one thing. I think it's a bad reason. I think Dennis Allen is a horrible coach in terms of in-game management. He was not good with the Raiders, and if we're counting Bill Belichick and his stint as one continuous stint with Cleveland and New England, even though that's not true in the slightest bit, then we should do the same thing with Allen and count his stint with the Raiders, which was god-awful. So really, Allen is entering year 6 with nothing to show for it. But if you want to keep him on, fine, whatever floats your boat. But don't use this as the reason. Don't use Bill Belichick, Tom Landry, and Chuck Noll as the reason why, when there's a bunch of other coaches that were terrible at the start and stayed terrible, and when the situations were completely different. It's like comparing apples and oranges here. Horrible, horrible justification. I don't know what Mickey Loomis is faking. I don't know why he's keeping Dennis Allen on, and to use this as the justification for why, not because of anything with Dennis Allen, but because other coaches were bad at the start. That's a horrible, horrible reason. That's not a good justification at all. It is a completely different situation. Your situation is different than other people's situations. Dennis Allen, his situation is different than Bill Belichick, Tom Landry, Chuck Noll. So don't compare it to them. Don't compare it to those three. Give me a break. Just a bizarre series of events, a bizarre comment made by Mickey Loomis. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree with Mickey Loomis's logic? Do you think the Saints made the right call in keeping Dennis Allen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And that's going to do for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure to like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, Jarrett9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, Jarrett9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.